Good afternoon, everyone. As Dr. Mims did mention, my name is Zachary Martin, graduate student at Kentucky State University. My project has dealt with the impacts on the ecosystems with the introduction of paddlefish. So reservoir ranching, this is a sustainable, extensive, non-polluting aquaculture production system. This is where we stock hatchery-reared paddlefish. These are phase 2, right around or greater than 30 centimeters. We've released these fish into private or public lakes and reservoirs at low densities, depending on the productivity of the waters. It could be anywhere from 25 to 75 fish per hectare. They do feed naturally on occurring zooplankton, and until they reach the harvestable size and age, when we then remove them. As was mentioned before, in 2006, KFW did promulgate some regulations allowing private individuals to contract with municipalities in order to stock paddlefish into their waters, without going into the state-owned waters. These contracts are based on profit sharing generated from the sale of caviar and meat. Sometimes around 20% goes back to the municipality. And as of right now, Kentucky is the only state in the country which has passed these regulations allowing for reservoir ranching. And since 2006, there have been 800 hectares of water in Kentucky stocked. These reservoirs range anywhere from 20 to 270 hectares. And these waters have been stocked with up to 50 fish per hectare. And we've noticed in some subsequent harvests that these paddlefish average anywhere from 1.5 to 2 kilograms of growth per year. So we've had, in the study that I'm doing, we have 2 treatment reservoirs, which we compare to 2 control reservoirs. The first of which is Lake Linville. This is the smaller reservoir, treatment reservoir, included in my research project. It's about 142 hectares. And then our other one is Wood Creek Lake. This is 263 hectares. We've had great survival from what we can tell in Wood Creek. Maybe around 10,000 fish are still in there, or went in there initially, correct? 10,000 fish were stocked into Wood Creek initially?
Yes.
Yeah. And then Lake Linville, we had some survival problems, so we're not really sure.
We stocked 3,000.
Stocked 3,000 in Linville, and we suspect probably lost about half of them due to some water quality issues and possible pollutants. There are some perceived conflicts with reservoir ranching, as Dr. Mims talked about in between these 2 presentations. These concerns are mainly grounded in sort of a public perception of reservoir ranching, and it's become sort of a perception that reservoir ranching is unable to coexist with recreational fishing, which really has been more of a political position than anything factual. Many of the anglers we speak to when we're in the field doing, water quality monthly or whatever, everyone is really, really ambitious, about the introduction of paddlefish. They're interested in the initial stocking, and then even in the lakes where they've been stocked, people have shown really positive responses. But the anglers are concerned that they'll affect the established sport fish populations by competing with the food base for those larval sport fish. And what we've actually found is, the sport fish are more pelagic feeders, but while the sport fish larvae are more in the littoral areas. So really there's this division in habitat use, and there's really very little competition. But Fish and Wildlife did have concerns with that wide-scale implementation of reservoir ranching, so we've been limited to municipal waters rather than state waters. And as Dr. Mims mentioned before, we've had public meetings at some of these municipalities where we wanted to stock paddlefish. And depending on what these people have been told, whether it's true or not, some of them have positive responses, while others have posted signs like this. This was Spa Lake, I think 07 maybe, and they one man lived on this lake and somehow was in contact with Fish and Wildlife, and they informed him that it would decimate sport fishing and clean out the zooplankton. So he posted these around town, encouraging people to come to the meeting, and really, I mean, it's they've sensationalized what little fact they believe they had, just to get people riled up, just to get into that meeting and have the small kids crying and things like that. So, but there are many possible benefits of reservoir ranching that far outweigh any of this. These municipalities who choose to contract with individuals can see substantial revenue, up to 20% of the wholesale value of the caviar and meat. And it also creates local jobs in rural areas, which produce Kentucky Proud products, which is a major marketing scheme in Kentucky. You know, anything manufactured or produced in Kentucky gets this label. And also it's enhancing national food security by allowing America to produce the food that we eat here domestically instead of importing. So our initial studies have actually shown that paddlefish introductions could possibly enhancing the existing fisheries, and later on I'll go into some of our preliminary results that we found and explain a little bit more about that. But the goal of our study has been to assess the environmental impact of the paddlefish introductions on the ecosystems in our 2 treatment reservoirs as compared to the 2 controlled. And we do have some specific objectives. One is to water 7 water quality parameters. We do this from April to October of every year, and we've been doing this since '07, since after the paddlefish were stocked. We also do this in our control lakes. We've also identified the algae composition since '06. We split this into 4 groups. Again, I'll discuss this later on a little more in depth. And we establish seasonal zooplankton concentrations once a month, go out and measure organisms per liter of several groups of zooplankton. And finally, we'll evaluate the existing fish communities. This includes sport fish as well as rough fish. And our water quality parameters that we do sample from April to October, we develop an oxygen temperature profile. This is at half-meter increments. And this is kind of related to what NOAA's doing. Give us an idea of sort of the three-dimensional location of these fish, you know, as related to optimal temperatures and oxygen. We measure conductivity, sort of related to the productivity of the water, maybe how many organisms are suspended in that water column. We measure photic zone to see what the depth extremes of the zooplankton and algae could be, depending on how far the light is penetrating. And we also measure phosphorus and nitrogen content to relate to productivity. So in order to identify that algae composition, we've collected water using a submersible pump. This we lower through the photic zone and raise at 1 meter per second. The samples are stored in opaque bottles on ice until we return to the laboratory, where we use this Moldenke algae analyzer. This splits the algae into 4 groups. And what we'd like to do is, over the time that we've been collecting this data, is see what sort of effect the paddlefish have had on algae composition as they've grown and become more established in these reservoirs. And we've also done a similar thing with zooplankton, but we collect this with a Wisconsin-style zooplankton tow net, again raised at 1 meter per second. And we really need to monitor the zooplankton because they are the main prey item of the paddlefish. And this is really the main point of any perceived conflicts. These zooplankton have been identified into groups which include the Splanchna, the Bosmina, the Diaphanosoma, Calanoid, and Daphnia, as well as a couple other groups. The fish community, we sampled this using nighttime electrofishing. We did 15-minute stations. Our effort depends on the surface area of the reservoir we're sampling. So I think our smallest reservoir we did 1.5 hours. Our largest reservoir we did 12 hours. So any species that we see, we collect. These species are then measured and weighed. We only weigh the first 5 of each size class. And then for sport species, we actually collected scales from each of these species. This includes your black bass, largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, the occasional walleye, bluegill, red ear, these things that most recreational anglers prefer to catch. We really want to see what the fitness is of that population over time. And it's important to monitor these communities to see what effects the paddlefish have on their composition and fitness. And again, I have some numbers related to this later on, I think. Here's our water quality results. This shows 07, which is the first year we collected this data, and then 2012, which is our most current sampling season. And later on, I'll kind of discuss our results, what we've seen for each of these. Right now, we'll just sort of introduce what we've done. Our algae results, again, here are 4 groups that we've divided our samples into. You see each of the treatment reservoirs, Lake Linville, which was our smaller one, and then Wood Creek, which was larger. And our zooplankton results, here you have 2007 copepod abundance. Wood Creek is in red, while Linville is in green. And here's this seasonal fluctuation where we have these high peaks kind of early on in the season. And then as water temperatures increase, you kind of see a dip. And it's easier to see in Wood Creek maybe with the larger bars. And then towards the end of the sampling season, when the water temps cool down, then we see that density increase again. And this is our trend line. We've kind of I've set this for Wood Creek specifically. And this is the boom-bust cycle that we spoke about earlier. And this is what we've actually seen in 2012 with the copepods. Not only have we seen an increase in organisms per liter, but we've also seen this leveling effect of the organisms per liter. So instead of in April having many organisms available to sport fish and paddlefish, and then a lower later on in the season, we've actually seen this more level, steady population of the zooplankton, which kind of in our eyes, just preliminary, anecdotally thinking, would provide more food for the fish in that reservoir for a longer time during that season. And we've actually seen similar things in the calanoids, or I'm sorry, the cladocerans in Wood Creek and Linville. Again, this is 07. We can see this real vast boom-bust cycle going on, with high densities in April, low in May and June, and then again a little later on in the season getting higher. Now the outlier in 07 was October, which was actually lower than what we noticed with the copepods. And here's our trend line again for Wood Creek, and you're seeing that cycling through the season, whereas here we've got the more leveling effect. Again, this is a trend line for Wood Creek. And we did, again, even in the cladocerans, see an increase in density from 07 to 2012. So if anything, these paddlefish have really enhanced the zooplankton populations instead of decimating them, as been discussed by Fish and Wildlife. And really this is going to benefit not only our production for caviar reasons, but even enhance the sport fishery by providing a more consistent food base for those larval fish. So the water quality parameters that I showed you earlier, they really fell within acceptable range for the culture of paddlefish. There's nothing too significant that's worth discussing. And the same with the algae. There's really no significant change in the bloom composition after the addition of paddlefish. And again, of course, we do need to analyze this statistically in the future, but this is really our preliminary findings for these. And zooplankton, as I had discussed, did show that normation in 2012. However, we do see a more leveling effect. In 2007, the zooplankton was the boom bust. In 2012, it was more leveled. And this could be a result, as we believe, as that population being cropped off by the paddlefish. This resulted in a more sustainable population in the zooplankton Wood Creek. And this is it was more sustainable in Wood Creek than in Linville, probably due to our higher stocking density in Wood Creek, giving more fish, including more fish, allowing for a greater cropping of that zooplankton. And again, they did increase from 07 to 2012. So analysis of our data are underway to better verify these relationships statistically, and further data collection will continue for an additional 2 years. And this, the data we've collected now and our additional will be used to develop a plan for reservoir ranching. So thank you very much.
Sorry, we don't have time for questions. We'll have to go